Greg Sankey was speaking earlier this week on getting back to play, and we're going to talk to Tom Hart from the SEC Network here shortly. We played the soundbite from Sankey over on Rich Eisen on the NFL Network, his podcast earlier this week, talking about laying the foundation for football season. Then Sankey went in to talk a little bit more about what the fans may look like in the stands.
So everybody's going to critique this, but we're in the learning process. And we've seen mass gatherings around protests that have happened, and so those are learning experiences, as I understand, for people in the scientific and medical world. I'm not going to tell you that's the basis for us moving forward, but all of this learning, because research is usually done over years and decades, and we're talking weeks and months, which is why the feedback and the guidance changes. And that's part of the learning that needs to take place for us as well as our entire society.
One more from Sankey here, talking about the number of tests required to get football going.
No, we've not. In fact, one of the misnomers is our campuses actually are involved in testing. We didn't mandate testing,
right?
And this informs the answer because the availability and the nature of testing and the effectiveness of testing and accuracy of testing and timing of testing are all kind of this jumble of how do we move forward. That's one of those ongoing points of dialogue for our conference with our medical advisors and for all five, and I'd argue every one of the college conferences to talk about as it relates to how do we prepare for football. So we haven't talked about, we've talked generally about volume of testing, so that's the number, what's the right timing, what kind of tests may be available, and all of that is something that I think everybody's coming to grips with.
Yeah, so I kind of like what Sankey has to say there, and I think it's kind of representative of my attitude throughout this entire process as well, which is that, yes, there's been a lot of stuff that has changed, but as he said, research that normally takes place over years in order to find solid answers is now trying to take place in a matter of weeks, in a matter of months. So, remember when we were wiping down, I don't know if you ever were, but, we got super paranoid, right? And I'm, changing clothes after every day and wiping down all my groceries and everything. And then we learned that contact spread and contact tracing maybe isn't as much of a problem as originally thought, and maybe you don't need to do that, right? And the main thing is just kind of distancing yourself, the 6 feet rule. And then maybe it comes out eventually that that's not needed either. And then that'll be great as well, and we'll adjust accordingly. But I do like that it sounds like the SEC is ultimately using that research as the basis for their guidelines going forward. And it seems like after a few more weeks of schools reporting, like LSU and other schools reporting their findings, you'll have a much clearer picture of how this is all going to work. And I talked about this on Corey Johnson's show yesterday. This is all a part. Yeah, the man. But this is all a part of that new normal. And it seems like when you look at college sports, really sports in general, and you look at the fact that these student athletes are low risk in terms of having bad complications. Remember, of all the LSU players, nobody's been hospitalized. A lot were even asymptomatic. It seems like that this is a level, or I guess we'll learn over the next few weeks, is this a level of acceptable risk that everybody's kind of willing to buy into in order to have sports? And right now, it feels like it is, and we'll just continue to watch the situation develop. But yeah, I definitely feel like football happens. There's too much on the line. I just don't know, whatever. We'll see what happens with the fans. But as Sankey said, the next 3 weeks will tell us a lot.
All right, that was Greg Sankey speaking on the Rich Eisen Show on his podcast earlier this week. That sound was provided by Eisen in the NFL Network.